Ladies and gentlemen, big hairy news.
Hey, kia ora koutou whānau. Welcome back to another episode of Big Hairy News. Kia ora, Chewie. How are you, love?
Kia ora, Pat. I lied. We've stopped on Bomber's wrap-up speech.
Well, that's okay. People will still be over there, and they'll come over here when they get a minute. You doing well? How's your day going?
I am doing well. Today's been a day of challenges, Pat. I won't get too much into it, but a really good example is I was out the back of my workplace with my little water bottle, hydrating. Very important to stay hydrated.
Yep.
I dropped the bottle, and all the contents fucking shotgunned out of the bottle all over my boss's back.
Yeah.
And
Good.
Brand new computer he got from head office.
Yeah.
So that just sums up just how top notch my day has been.
Very good. Very good. Let me just say, I'm just watching. They're just wrapping up on they're finished on the working group now. So let's just put that up there. Let's just start off the show. I didn't do this last night, so we'll do it again tonight by saying a huge thanks to all our patrons. I want to call out some of the newbies from this week. That means in the last kind of 7 days or so. A huge thanks to Cold Spark, who became a producer this week. Holly, Tans, one of my favorite names coming up of all times now. Are you ready for this? Vanderpanda. Vanderpanda.
Very good.
Yep. And then
We
there's
like
Ben Monkhoff Swain and Steve Barkman have all become patrons on the last week. Thank you so much for being a part of what we do. If you want to find out more about us, you head to patreon.com/Big Hairy News. And like what's happened today, I actually have had a conversation with Marilyn Garson from the Alternative Jewish Voices. It is the 1 year. I feel so wrong saying it's the 1 year anniversary of October the 7th. I really struggle with because anniversary kind of, you have to think about that dictates kind of it's 12 months, but it's a 12 months ago thing. Yeah, it was a hard way of actually framing it, but I've already had that chat with Marilyn Garson. If you are a patron already, you can get access to it because it's already put up on the site. If you're not a patron, patreon.com/Big Hairy News to be a part of what we do, and you can get yourself on there. Now, hello, welcome to the show, people from Bomberland. I'm sure you're coming across now. I can see the numbers going through the roof. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a review now. We're going to talk about what we've just seen, and it doesn't matter how long it takes because it's a pre-recorded conversation with Marilyn Garson, and I've already told her I might put it off till tomorrow night. So should we go a long time on this, then we can put that off till tomorrow because it's pre-recorded. So we'll just see how the night pans out. Now, speaking of actually having a chat about what we've just seen, we thought we'd better get some people with brains along to talk about this tonight. Bomber may stop in. I've sent him the link, but of course, big night. They might be going out for a drink afterwards. It's a huge show. So grain of salt. Not expecting him to see him really, but he might stick his head in. We'll see what happens. But who is going to stick his head in for us is Matthew Tukaki. Matthew, good evening to you, sir.
Good, boys. Good to be with you.
Kia ora, mate.
Those new glasses? They look like new glasses.
Oh, no, it's just my new look, eh?
Now, you were streaming the debate we just saw on Ngāti as well. Tell us why you did that.
So I just think that it's good for everybody as much as possible to be in the conversation. And I'll tell you why. Because, look, it's communities that create, movements that create momentum and momentum that creates change. Yeah. And I think in this case, with David Seymour and the ACT Party and what they're driving around Te Tiriti o Waitangi, it's going in the opposite direction. Sometimes movements ball in the direction of the right, sadly, but I think he has completely misjudged the will of the majority of New Zealanders, and not by a small margin either.
Yeah, I actually think it wasn't really talked about in that debate, and I'm not. You know, sometimes you'll say something like this, and it sound like I'm not making a joke. I reckon I've got the answer. I reckon I've got the answer as to what we need to do. Well, I'm not going to tell you now because we're going to go through the whole thing, and I'll tell you at the end. But I reckon that I've got
it's a secret.
Secret. Well, it's not a secret.
Oh,
to me.
I bought that book and I want to get a refund.
Yeah, no, we'll see how it goes. I've got a bunch of clips to play, which we'll go through and play and have a talk about them. But first of all, Chewy, you got any general vibes, general feels about the debate you just saw?
Yeah. Okay. So I've got two things. Well, first thing, the debate itself. I think David Seymour is operating from a fundamentally bedrock incorrect assumption that the treaty is an agreement between races. That is wrong. And if that's his starting point, then everything else that he's talking about is built on sand. It is not an agreement between Māori and the white race. It is an agreement, the Crown and Māori.
Well, you can even think one step less.
Dragging
We talked about
it's racist. He's dragging it into the space because that's where he wants to have the fight. He wants to make it about race.
But we talked about this last week. You can even go one step further than that, Chewy. It's a contract between the Crown and the landowners. Yeah, the landowners happen to be Māori, but you don't have to identify half of that based on their race either. They were just the people who were here, and so it's between the landowners and the Crown, or the inhabitants and the Crown. You can take race out of it altogether. You don't have to refer to either side, by that term. Maddie, what did you get out of it?
Yeah, look, three quick observations. Chewy, fundamentally agree with you. When you have a look at what Helmut was saying and the contradiction, I'll use the word contradiction quite a bit over the next few minutes. When you have a look at what Helmut was saying, he was talking about the description of the majority that were here at the time being Māori, more than 100,000 of us, and a very small group of Europeans. What people forget is that the antithesis or the foundation of that document was not just Te Tiriti o Waitangi, it was He Whakaputanga. And the letters written to King William at the time, just pre-1835, which was seeking protection because in the north we had a whole lot of out-of-control Europeans running amok. We had them bootlegging, boozing and prostituting and God knows what. And so a lot of it wasn't about sovereignty over all. It was about governorship over that small minority of people to get them back under control. They were out of control. And so the argument that David Seymour runs is about sovereignty. And he said it, he was asked the question, do you think Māori ceded sovereignty? And he said, yes. Said, no. They ceded governorship. And again, it's that misinterpretation that David wants us to all now bank on. So we'll now interpret the treaty in terms of today's New Zealand society. Now, three contradictions in what David was saying, if you don't mind, gentlemen. Number one, he started by saying, it's everybody, or the small group of people have held power over our thinking and our thought and our jurisdiction and our this and our that. And he pulls out the swindle. Which is, it's the public servants, it's the politicians, it's the jurists, and it's the academics. Well, okay, when you have a look at the time scale, even just the last 50 years, thousands of New Zealand's most preeminent people right across society, from left to right and somewhere in between, have said time and time again that actually this is what the treaty means. And then he goes on to say, now it's time for that small group of people, even a smaller group of people, the Parliament of New Zealand, to now reinterpret things. Well, so that's the first contradiction. The second contradiction David pulls out is this line about equal right. Everyone's born equal. And then he goes on to say in the debate that actually, but all they really want is for everybody to have a healthy and a warm, safe home sort of thing, and everyone should have a fighting chance, so to speak, at a job and economic opportunities. Yeah, but we wouldn't need any of that if everyone was born equal. So that's a second contradiction. I mean, and then the third contradiction is this interpretation of the landscape. So what you see David doing, and Damien Grant did this as well, they only read a portion of the judgment. Now, as the former executive director of the New Zealand Māori Council involved in the case that I believe that he was talking about, the state-owned enterprises case, I can tell you chapter and verse what the courts ruled in that case in terms of rights and so on and so forth. And so that's the third contradiction. So he starts a statement without giving the full context of what occurred, and so it's that very interpretation that people are seeking. And if I could then just add in, just for shits and giggles, gentlemen, just for shits and giggles, the lie, and the lie is this: the lie is somehow that Te Tiriti o Waitangi is between everybody else now and the Crown or the government of New Zealand. No, it's not. Te Tiriti o Waitangi was signed between Māori and the Crown. And so when he talks about also in the debate, which I was flabbergasted around, oh, well, arguably they ceded sovereignty to the most powerful queen of all time, or at the time, or the biggest power on earth, and Māori apparently recognised that. Māori didn't have two clues who the
I
Crown.
thought that too.
And so that's the shtick, if you like, to use that very Jewish word, the shtick. The shtick is this: don't look over here, look over there.
Yeah,
and he's also, sorry, one last thing if I can just add, because I'm on a rant. I can't believe I've got this much energy after being up at 7 o'clock this morning. But it must be all those lollies I've been pinching out of Willie Jackson's jar. But the thing that really is the shtick here is don't look here, look over there, and at the same time you're looking over there, don't see what I'm doing over here.
Yeah.
And he didn't initially answer the question about the citizens that initiated a referendum. He came back to it, but he's not discouraging others from initiating the referendum. And that becomes the power imbalance, the shtick, if you like. So, sorry, that's my rant over for now.
No, it's all good, because I've written down, I'm going to show a clip shortly, I've written down how would Māori know that England was a superpower? Exactly what he said. How the hell would they know? There's one ship in the harbour and some white fellas looking weird. How would that equate to, whoa, superpower? How would that equate to? Were they basically America of today? That's what they were back then.
That's right. How did the Aztecs and the Incas know that the Spanish, when they landed on the beach, were going to kill them all? They didn't.
At the risk of me being clipped and quoted completely out of context, surely anybody could realize just on first look the natural superiority of the white race. And that's where some people are operating from in this agreement.
Yeah.
2,000 Europeans, 100,000 Māori, and they look at our shitty little settlement and go, yeah, we should give it all up.
And look, especially Chewy, I mean, not that we need to speak of this now, Matty, you know this probably better than me. What I understand is a bunch of the earliest settlers wouldn't have survived without Māori helping them and looking after them and showing them how to fish. So you probably saw those early settlers and Māori probably thought they were inferior because they couldn't survive the land like Māori could. That would be a possibility at least, let alone look at these guys who don't know how to fish in our lands and don't know how to work the land. Man, they're a superpower compared to us. It's just nonsense.
Let's be very clear about who our Pākehā European ancestors were. But unlike Australia, they were not transported here by ships and chains or the convicts, because David also mentioned the Irish and the Scottish in his diatribe. We're talking about prostitutes and bootleggers and gun runners. We were talking
whalers.
About the very worst whale. I mean, and this is coming into a sophisticated society in terms of Māori who were already trading with each other. We had our own economy, our own ecosystems, etc., etc. We were trading with Australia. We were helping the whalers well before the treaty was signed of trading with other countries and between other countries. So it's very rich for them to say, or for David to say, as an example, or allude to, somehow we were so inferior, we needed their superiority to help us along our way.
All right, let's play some clips. Before we do that, we're just going to do a few of the super chats, or else we'll get to the end of the show and there'll be, which would be a lovely issue to have 200 super chats, but we don't want to leave them until the end of the show and then have a massive job to do. Kiwi Bird says Helmut did well in this debate. He held his own. Kiwi Bird again, Helmut is not a professional debater. He kept up with David Seymour. That's impressive. I think he won. Bubba says, I forgot my coffee. Here's a late fee. Oh, thank you for that. Appreciate that. Kooky Nick wants us all to hit the like. Frosty says, could we get a rating out of 10 for the debate? Maybe we'll do that later on, or you guys can think of that if you want. Tiffany says, surfacing Atlas Network pictures with David. Proletariat says, I'm just super mad that there wasn't fact checking on. Yeah, I guess in that kind of setting with that kind of debate, it's well, unless you're the person who is the fact checker.
On quite a bit of what was discussed, I don't know how you would do it.
Yeah. Because it was ping ponging around. Another one from Tiffany. David is not royalty or representing Māori. Wooming says, I was worried that David would try to make Helmut lose his calm with pathetic jives, but Helmut was great, composed and logical. He won in my opinion. Mr. Arvid says, David, keep saying, where in the world has a two-tier system worked? By your logic, where has it worked? Putting it to a binary vote in the public. He says that thing as well about where you give me an example of somewhere in the world where, setting up, I don't know quite how he words it, but basically affirmative action in America is the answer to where you've seen that work by giving certain opportunities to one group above another to bring back an equality if you can. And it has worked. Absolutely has worked. So, Tales from the Carbon Pulse, Reality Roundtable 11 by Nate Hagans. Māori are closer to these facts than the Crown is. Thank you, Bill, for your super chat there. I see Spider's got a super chat as well, but it's actually a question for Bomber, so we'll hold it off for now, Spider. And if he comes along, we can then put it to him. Our brother says, David, 8% of the vote, harping on about minority, LOL. Yeah, it's an interesting point. We'll do one more. Frosty, was the treaty not also partially signed because of Honga Hiki's warning of the red coat invasion? Do you know anything about that, Matt? I don't know anything about that.
No, he didn't.
Okay, well, there you go. He does know something about it, and it wasn't the case. Let's have a look at this first clip. Now, I've kind of paused them during the live stream, so hopefully this is going to work. I paused it and then opened a new window. This was just a part of the opening statement for Helmut when he basically said, here are the facts. I wanted to replay that.
And for our nation. It is a historical fact. Listen to this. It's a historical fact that every non-Māori person, every democratic or civil institution in this land is only here because the sovereign tribes of Aotearoa and the British Empire reached agreement on the terms of their existence here in 1840. And what were those terms? Act would have us believe those rangatira in 1840 surrendered their authority to Hobson and his queen. In exchange, they were permitted to keep their lands and treasures, were granted the rights of British citizenship, and that total surrender of chiefly tribal mana and power was obtained over 100,000 fiercely independent, warlike people by few officials, some missionaries, without military support or compensation. Now, I don't know about you, but that sounds like a damn good trick to me. The actual terms were that the rangatira granted the British the right to apply British law and governance. That's actually literally what kāwanatanga means. Not sovereignty, governance. Kāwana is a transliteration of governor. Kāwanatanga denotes the role of governance, not sovereignty. Governance over who? The 2,000 odd British citizens that were in this land and those that would follow. In return, the existing rights of total chiefly authority, literally what tino rangatiratanga means, over tribes and resources were guaranteed, as well as protection and rights of citizenship. That's it. Now, you don't have to be a genius to know which one of those scenarios makes more sense or is true.
There you go. So there's a bit of the opening statement. Matt, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, look, I mean, and it comes back to something that was referenced later on, which is the lands case that they talked about, that David Seymour also referenced and said, Dame Jacinda talked about. It's also another fabrication, if you like, in what David Seymour says, that, well, the courts and others have never defined the principles, and that's because the courts give direction, right? So let me just read this out to you. In their judgments in this case, the court recognised a number of principles of the Treaty of Waitangi, including kāwanatanga and tino rangatiratanga. In other words, the right of the Crown to govern and the right of Māori to continue to exercise self-determination. Point 2, on an ongoing partnership with obligations to act reasonably and in good faith, hence the treaty settlements process. And in the case of the state-owned enterprises case, it was very much about, assets that would have been contentious not being transferred over to state-owned enterprises that could ultimately be sold, like, land or water or whatever the case might be. The third is duty to remedy past breaches. Again, reference to settlements. And let's move on to this. And the other one was active protection. Now, the court also noted that the use of the phrase treaty principles rather than the terms of the treaty calls for an assessment of the relationship the parties hoped to create by and reflect in that document, and an inquiry into the benefits and obligations involved in applying its language in today's changed conditions. And then what you've seen since the late 80s, early 90s is successive governments, including governments with people such as Winston Peters, Jim Bolger, Doug Graham, all of these different people, to actively pursue remedy. And that's what's happened in the Ngāi Tahu settlements in Tainui and so on and so on. And so it's actually a fabrication of the narrative that David is peddling, that the courts haven't attempted to get everybody to discuss this. And that's a prudent approach to take. So the courts have held out and made decisions. It's whether or not the responsible minority that David now wants to interpret everything, to interpret those decisions adequately, because apparently everyone's wrong.
Yeah, that's been proven time and time again. Even when there was debates before the election, they were saying to David, Willie Jackson was very good at it. How come this person was right and this person was right? Now you're saying all of those academics and lawyers and historians are wrong, and you're the only right one, David Seymour. So that's been but it seems just to go over everyone's head because we continue on.
And so Helmut's right when he talks about the difference in interpretation of Kāwanatanga as an example. And then what David and his ilk conveniently do, and again, I mentioned this before, is they provide a line or a statement convenient to their narrative without providing the full context. And then they, when all of a sudden you're looking directly at them, they say, oh, by the way, now look over there. It was the public servants and the academics and the parliamentarians and all these other lawyers and jurists. They're the ones that created this problem. Well, no. And then you step forward into today. And I think this is the other point Helmut was attempting to make. And I think Helmut really made some good points, which was simply this, no, this is not about those who recently arrived yesterday or today or tomorrow. This is about settling the claims of what happened yesteryear. Yes, I get that. But then also, and I mentioned the contradiction, sorry, I might be ranting again, but the contradiction once again that everybody in this country is somehow born equal. Well, if that's the case and everyone's going to live in a warm and healthy home, well, why did you cut all the money from building state houses in, David, in your current government? Or why did you get rid of Te Akapai Order? Because apparently we're less equal in your eyes than everybody else, because we've got apparently all this stuff, which is much more so than everybody else. But that's also because we didn't start with equality in our lives from the get-go. So I'm flabbergasted that we're even having a debate like this on an issue as important. Now, if you want to have a conversation about the future constitutional arrangements of Aotearoa, with a recognition that we do not have a constitution in this country, instead we have a series of laws born over many years, then let's have that conversation. But not throw out the Treaty of Waitangi just for convenience of a conversation you'd rather have. Rant over.
David Seymour kept talking about equal rights and equality, and I just, as always, I'm just reminded of the brilliant imagery. Yeah, there you go. There's equality, and that's what David wants. He wants equality, whereas I think most of us either want equity or liberation. He wants equality. That the smallest, perhaps the most vulnerable, will still not get what they need. Chewie, before we go to the next clip, do you want to pick up on anything from there?
I think this is the space that David Seymour wants to play in. He wants to frame the arena, and he wants to frame it in a way of like, from birth, we're all equal. That is a fiction. That is an absolute fiction. Your life is affected by the lives your parents led and the lives that their parents led. And this is what we're talking about, going back generations of how disadvantaged Māori have been.
Yeah.
Because the treaty has been widespread trampled. And this thing that he's railing against, this few elite people that have decided what the treaty means, were because of the 100+ years of trampling that agreement. And it's taken learned, considered people getting their heads together and having a rational discussion of what this means in the framework of New Zealand at that time to get to where we are now. And David seems to think the best way forward is just to ram through this members bill that'll go nowhere and use that as a lead-in to launching, advertising basically for his citizens-initiated referendum. And if I'm going to judge how that's going to go, I'm going to judge it by the fact that I have had to ban the first person in our chat for dropping the N-bomb.
Oh,
No.
really?
We've been doing this for years, and it popped up. And I looked, I was moderating the chat for the working groups thing, and look, the two different sides of this argument are not dealing with the same cards, put it that way. We're going back to some of the most racist things that I've seen. We are not prepared for a citizens-initiated referendum because we're not. If David Seymour wants to talk about equality, we're not all arguing from a level playing field or even a position of good faith.
Chewie, it's that idea as well. It's people who don't want to see like generational harm, right? They just don't want to see it. Oh, just pull yourself up by the bootstraps. Just, be better. But often in those examples, the equal and opposite is the same. If you said to someone, if your dad was the richest person in New Zealand, would you see a benefit from that? Yeah. If your granddad was the richest person in New Zealand, would you see benefit for that? Yeah. If your great-granddad was the richest person in New Zealand, would you see benefit for that? Yeah. How far would you have to go back to have the richest person in New Zealand before you wouldn't see any benefit from that? And they might go, well, I don't know, 4 or 5 generations? All right, now flip it. If your dad was the most downtrodden person in New Zealand, would you see effect of that? You can't really argue it when you do the equal and opposite, and most people tend to agree with you.
Can I just say to you guys about wealth, this whole interpretation of wealth being about some economic grand utopia. In Māori society, wealth is whānau. Wealth is your mokopuna and your tamariki. Wealth is having all your whānau around you when you need them. And that's displayed in what I would call manakitanga. And you see that manakitanga come out every single day. And at the worst of times in New Zealand history, whether it be through the pandemic or whether it be the earthquakes in Kaikoura or Christchurch, we open up our marae. We take anybody and we don't determine that they should access our marae or our manakitanga based on race.
Yeah.
We determine that if your heart beats like our heart does, welcome into our whare. Here, have some kai. And when you're having that kai, let me tell you a story and sing you a song and give you a kiss on the cheek. And I might ask you for a game of euchre, and we'll tell some tall stories and laugh. And, I'll pull the guitar out and attempt to play it while you're not looking like a Milli Vanilli bloody song on an Netflix special. And so, that's what we determine wealth to be. And we don't determine somebody's wealth necessarily by monetary value that everybody else, like David Seymour and Damien Grant and others, might want to do. And I can't express that enough, because the wealth of Māori society at the time that the European arrived is the same today. Manakitanga, aroha, all of those different words that have so much meaning. And by the way, that the vast majority of New Zealanders have great pride and display themselves. If you have a look at the number of volunteers in New Zealand society that give with their hearts, I call that manakitanga. And so the other thing that I think is disturbing in what David Seymour was spouting tonight was somehow wealth should be determined through equal opportunity based on these principles, which invariably comes down to financial security, etc., etc. You know what? I open my house up to anybody that wants to come and stay here. Hell, you two are welcome if you're ever up in Auckland. My dog's crazy. The guitar's only got 1 string, not 6. And I have a drum kit that suspiciously has a hole in it. In fact, I probably knocked that drum kit off down the rubbish dump around the corner. And so, that's what I think wealth needs to be, and that creates equality amongst us all.
Yeah.
And so I think the other point that I'd like to make, and just based on what you both said so far, is that I think Helmut held himself really well. And then the response from David was to say, "Oh, he's never seen more division in this country since the Springbok tour." And I'm not quoting directly, but that is absolutely evil. I just cannot believe he actually said that. And the reason I say that I can't believe he said that is, bro, you're the one creating whatever division you think is going on here. Sorry.
I'm going to play. No, every time we're going to do a round. I'm going to play another clip here. And that great Māori academic Matthew Hooton a few weeks ago on the working club, the working group, this podcast, he said, obviously, one of the things he thinks is a load of BS around Hobson's pledge is it's a literal pledge that Hobson is believed to have said that we are one people, and that was Hobson's quote-unquote pledge. But as that great Māori academic said, there's no evidence for it. A part of this thing I want to play for you right now is when Helmut's talking about there's no evidence. There's no evidence that Māori ceded sovereignty anywhere.
I'd like to come back to the essential point. There is no evidence, not linguistic, not cultural, not historical at all, to the proposition that those chiefs ceded their mana motu hake. If it is, lay it out for me. Let's hear it and let's talk about it. Because as I've said, linguistically, culturally, historically, and logically, it didn't happen, David. And the implications is simple, right? If that didn't happen, then that puts at question the legitimacy of everything that's happened since constitutionally.
Look, it's all really interesting, but I actually don't see what you're trying to say or why you disagree with me, because the Treaty Principles Bill I propose starts out by saying the first principle is that the government has the right to govern and Parliament has the absolute right to make laws.
Where did it get that right?
Now, well, if that's going to be stated in the Treaty Principles Bill, you'd have to say it's coming from the treaty. So in a way, I think you actually agree with me. You agree with liberal democracy. You want to live in a country where everyone's equal. You want to live in a country where the treaty is our founding document and the right to govern comes out of it. It comes out of that principle. So it's not really clear what you actually disagree with.
Let me clarify for you. Let me clarify
you should be a supporter of the Treaty Principles
Bill. Here it is.
Bill.
Concentrate on what I'm about to say. So given that all the evidence and everything I've cited demonstrates that in fact ngā rangatira and ngā hapu of Aotearoa did not cede sovereignty, right? On what basis, what legitimate basis did the British Parliament then, in 1852, pass and implement the New Zealand Constitution Act 1852 that established the House of Representatives? On what basis? What legitimate basis? The answer is none. That means logically that Parliament and the courts are ultra vires. They're legally not justified to be here. Now, clearly they are here. Clearly, in fact, the
Crown has sovereignty.
Well.
By osmosis, and
by the same means
that
usurpers have secured sovereignty in every other land.
So we'll just leave with that part of that clip from there. I understand as well when you sign a treaty settlement, that's kind of the time you give the Crown kind of full authority. That's a part of signing off on a treaty settlement. What about that, Matthew? Do you want to speak to anything you just heard there?
Well, first of all, if I can just quickly come back to what I said about the Springbok tour. People forget that the Springbok tour was about New Zealanders standing against the tyranny of an apartheid South Africa.
Yep.
And we did that in stark opposition to the rugby mad few who wanted to just say, oh, yeah, but it's only sport. Let's just watch the rugby and all kumbaya. No. There was something bigger at play. And Nelson Mandela years later thanked us for doing that.
Yeah.
It was Māori who also went in 1967 to support the Aboriginal whānau over in Australia in the referendum of 67 about recognition in the Constitution of Australia. And, all that sort of stuff. So, first of all, the people the Springboks tour wasn't about us accepting what was going on. No, we all stood against it in our helmets, in our denim blue jackets, and God knows what. And so long may we do that as a country. That's what makes us special and unique. Just about Damien Grant also for a moment. I was expecting more from Damien about contracts and property rights and this sort of thing. I think he tried, but he sadly just completely missed the point. And in his attempt to be part of the conversation, I think he excluded himself quite early on. Although he did thank the sponsor, so cut by that. Look, just in relation to specifically that quarter between David and Helmut just then, the interesting thing that David keeps on coming to, but then quickly moving back from, is actually the one-liner when you are factually challenged by somebody like Helmut becomes your Achilles heel. And so that's the problem that I now have is, well, actually, was David attempting to speak to the majority of New Zealanders? Probably not. David in that whole debate and things that he's putting out there is attempting to speak to a small minority that will help him get over the line one more time so ACT makes a return to Parliament. I wonder now what is going to happen with Winston Peters, because we're not too far away from David becoming Deputy Prime Minister of New Zealand. We've already seen him to try and tell the old man while he's over at the UN what to put in a speech around the Israel-Palestinian stuff that's going on at the moment, the Israel, Gaza, now Hamas, and all the others. I just think it's I'm lost for words, to be frank.
I've got one more clip to play. Got one more clip to play, Chewie, but do you want to speak to that at all? Or should we play the next clip?
I want to talk about the Springbok tour because it's brought up a couple of ways and a couple of ways they tried to justify it. Like, again, this idea that all of New Zealand stood up against apartheid. No, we didn't. A very small group of very motivated people stood up for what was right. A small faction of people just wanted the rugby to go ahead, and a large portion of New Zealand were like, fuck, this is a bit awkward. And that's what we've got here. There's a huge chunk of New Zealand that are going, things are okay. Things like this isn't a huge deal to me one way or the other. Why can't we all be nice to each other? And then we have smaller groups that are like, I don't know, there's a big problem with this. And that's what, it's like when we're talking about the COVID stuff. Very small group of people, very loud, but that was still brought up as the most divided New Zealand's ever been. Most people in this country, I think, want to get through life being a dick to as few people as possible. And then some others there, again, a very small group, are the exact opposite. I want to be a bastard to everybody. We saw some of them in the chat. A lot of them have been banned here tonight. It's just, there's been so much progress made over the last 50 years, and it has been slow, and it has been, there's been a back and forth, and there's been a give or take to it, and I think that's fine. What David is trying to rush through is a panic move. And that is what has stirred this up. If he wants division, this is how he gets it. But he's always the one going, we're very divided. And I'm like, yeah, so just chill out.
It was also weird that the only thing Damien Grant could think of thanking David Seymour was for his pseudoephedrine fix over the weekend. No, fair call, Kapai. I think, if I was trying to explore another narrative just for a moment and humour me, there is a daunting fact here that everybody should just be aware of and proud of too. The Māori population is continuing to grow. And in our whānau and our families, no matter our ethnic backgrounds, we've got cousins and nephews and nieces, sons and daughters and mokopuna who also have Māori heritage. Whenever any one of us, whether we have Māori heritage or not, travel overseas, we're welcomed with open arms by proud other nations who love us. They love our culture. I mean, it's been, 30, 40 years since the Te Māori exhibition traveled to the greatest museums in the world, including New York and blah, blah, blah. And I just find it incredible that we try and draw this distinction around division when actually the vast majority of us, we spend Christmases together. We celebrate birthdays together. We take each other kai, in the evenings, and we still look over our fences and say good morning, good evening, and good night. And so, oh god, that sounds like that Truman Show nonsense, right? But this idea that somehow, and Chewie, I think you've hit the nail on the head. I think this idea or concept of now setting all of that richness and diversity to one side in favor of this new narrative, which is supposed to only now be interpreted by a very small minority based on a political requirement of getting back into parliament, is just hoha, hoha being the Māori word for nonsense. I mean,
bullshit.
And can I just say, I'm as proud of being Irish as I am being Māori. I mean, I hate to say this, but part of me wants to go to the pub, part of me doesn't want to go home, and neither of me wants to pay for it. And it doesn't matter which part of my ancestry applies to that particular example. I can tell you where I'm from. Sorry, I can tell you my whakapapa all the way back to County Cork, as I can my whakapapa all the way back to Matakana Island and Whānau Wapanui. I mean, I ask everybody to explore their whakapapa, no matter where they are. I once had a guy who worked for me who was Welsh, and he said to me, Matt, I'm a bit nervous about doing my pepeha. And I heard him talk, and I said, you're from Wales, eh? And he said, yeah. And I said, can you speak Welsh? And he said, absolutely. I said, bro, do your pepeha in Welsh. We would be the richer for it. We're such a rich country. We don't need Seymour.
I'm going to play this last clip now.
Sorry, that was rant number 4.
That's good, mate. Good. Hopefully you got a couple left in you. And I'll see you on Monday for brunch because we're up in Auckland.
Sweet.
Let me say that this is a continuation of the last clip because they talked a bit about there's no evidence that Māori ceded sovereignty. That's what Helmut said. And then he went on to talk about and it was actually quite interesting, Matt. There was a couple of times that I'm like, oh yeah, we've talked a bit about this in the past, and having Helmut come at it just seemed to give it some weight. It was like talking about who has rights and who doesn't have rights, and the absolute truth that David Seymour was trying to paint this Pollyanna picture of everyone being equal and everyone having the same rights, when it's not the case now, and it's got nothing to do with race. I mean, he's got parliamentary privilege to say whatever he wants, and he can't get held liable for the words he says. We don't. We have a different right in our lives straight away. There's so many of them. And Helmut kind of pointed out with a couple of good examples. And I think it's when we start by acknowledging we don't, we never will, and in some cases we shouldn't have the same rights, that's actually the beginning of a genuine conversation around where we're equal.
Everybody
yeah,
should
so
be
this
equal.
is an entertaining facet of the ACT position. So, which rights are we talking about, gentlemen?
Political and economic.
Political and economic.
Yeah.
Okay, I will go with political and economic to this extent.
Yes.
So, right now, the proposition that everybody in this or any other democracy has got exactly the same political rights is a fiction. I'll give you an example. Right, in this land, you can be married, have children. Have a job, pay your taxes, and all the other responsibilities of citizenship. If you're 17, sorry, you can't vote. You can't even get your full license. You can be voting age, have paid taxes for decades, right? But if you're convicted and in prison for 1,095 days, you can't vote. If you're convicted for 1,050 days, you can vote. Now, I'm simply making the observation that who can vote...
Getting a bit high school.
No. What Seymour's trying to do now is go, yeah, but there's good reason for that. Yeah, but there's good reason for that discrimination. And this is the whole point we've been making all year. There are lots of places where legal discrimination happens, whether it's the voting age, whether it's the drinking age, whether it's the pension, whether it's the disabled car park, whatever these things, it's discrimination, whether it's only male priests in the Catholic Church, they happen all over the place. And when you give those examples to Seymour, he goes, yeah, but there's a good reason for that. Okay, but what about the good reason for the other discrimination we're talking about, if indeed it is that?
I'm making a point to you, my friend. I'm making a point. Who can vote
Helmut,
has never been universal.
Let me drill down on that.
No, we'll leave it at that. Yeah, Matt, you're going to go anyway.
So let me just say this. We have active discrimination in this country that the Parliament of New Zealand can resolve. So, for example, the Credit Contracts Act and things like that. If you choose to leave school at 16 and you let's just say you want to save a little bit of money, get your deposit for a house, you can't go and apply. You won't qualify for a mortgage to the extent that others would if you were 18 and above. And so we already actively discriminate based on financial means everywhere. There's discrimination up and down Dale. There, by the way, the Parliament of New Zealand can resolve but chooses not to. And David is one of these people who wants to resolve the red tape around regulations, such as that 16-year-old who's a hardworking entrepreneurial New Zealander. Apparently, they mean less now because he's picking a fight on Te Tiriti o Waitangi.
The thing that's always most interesting about David Seymour, and we've pointed this out 20 times this year, I don't know, there is tons of legal discrimination out there.
Yeah.
I don't think 15-year-olds should be able to drink. So I'm okay with the discrimination based on age that you have to be 18. I'm okay that a 50-year-old can't get the pension, that you have to be 65 to get the pension. It's discrimination based on age. From my background in the Catholic Church when I was a kid, I'm okay that only males are allowed to be priests. Discrimination based on sex. You know, I'm okay with that. And what David Seymour's doing is he doesn't care about all those discriminations. He doesn't care about all those ones. He comes out and all he wants to do is, the way he sees it, level the playing field only with issues around race. Now, if he's only wanting to level the playing field as he sees it with issues of race, but none of these other discriminations, what does that tell us about the message that he's putting out there? Oh, because for him, only race. Only race is where he wants to see equality, because all the other discrimination, there's good reason for that. There's good reason for that. Right? No, nothing in race. Let's make it all equal.
Discrimination has become a matter of convenience for the privileged few. And what I mean by that is active discrimination is just as bad as unconscious bias, therefore discrimination too. So, I'm not trying to discriminate you. I just want to have this open discussion and debate about the treaty. No, you've got me wrong. No. I come from Māori descent as well. I mean, well, let's not talk about what your iwi think about you. But, it's kind of like, again, I come back to the point I keep raising. Don't look here. Don't look here. Look over there. And by the way, while you're looking over there, I don't want you to fact check me, because, and I hear what you're saying, Pat. It's quite, it might have been you two, I can't remember. But I get that it's hard to fact check a rolling fest. But actually, I didn't see anything new in the narrative that David was trying to debate tonight. It's the same old stuff.
Yeah, I found that very funny. Very funny. He was just singing the hits tonight. It was all stuff we've heard before. It's all the talking points he's been hammering at every point. There wasn't new information. There wasn't anything that showed him why his thought process was there more than what we've seen before. It was strange. I don't know what I expected there. I don't know if I was right to expect something else. But yeah, it was very, very strange.
Yeah, that look away you're talking about, Maddie. Don't look at this, look away. We've been calling that the shell game since before the last election. It's the National Party shell game. You put the P under the shell and you mix it all around. You've got to follow it. That's how we've been. But we've been talking about that since before the election. Here's an idea for a solution. Believe it or not, I don't know if I've got an answer, but I think from just listening again to tonight's debate, hearing a lot of these conversations over my 25 years in the media, 30 years in the media, whatever it's been, I think what we need to do, that sounds arrogant. I think what could be useful is placing into law what the actual definitions of words like kawanatanga are. Tino rangatingatanga. Because at the moment, what's happening is everyone's saying, well, I think it means this. I think it means this. If we went right back, Matthew, and we actually said, right, okay, let's have a conversation. But to have a conversation, we need to be speaking the same language. To speak the same language, we need to have an understanding of what these words mean. And if we went through a process, get all the smartest people involved, historians, all these people who know about Māori, about Māori, what it meant back in 1840, what it means today, and let's have and I'm saying an official definition for what those words mean, understood in law, and then you start the conversation. Because at the moment, it's just like, well, it means this. No, it means this. Oh, no, it means this. And what you've got then is a bunch of people with potentially racially motivated, yearnings, pushings, coming in and saying, no, you ceded sovereignty. That's what it means. You know what I mean? So I reckon if we actually put that into law, legal definitions of these words that there seems to be so much conflict around, no agreement on, and start from there. Is that a possibility?
You know, I think you've used a couple of words here, including legal. And let me just explore another thing that he said to tie that back into what you're saying.
Yeah.
So when Damien talked about the RMA, and he looked at David Seymour, and look, I'm not going to get the question correct, but he looked at Seymour and he said, so does this mean if this passes, etc., I no longer have to seek permission from the iwi on X, Y, and Z, or whatever it might. Now,
the RMA, I think he was talking about.
Yeah, it was the RMA. And then David Seymour came back and said, no, what would happen is that, we'd create the environment through that wouldn't be required anymore, or whatever it was. But here's the thing with our system of parliament, and which is why he fails the first hurdle and then ruling out and casting blame on the judiciary. Any law that is implemented in this country can be challenged by whomever it might affect. And we can take that legal challenge to the court. We can no longer take it to the Privy Council like we did in the state-owned enterprises case back in the 1990s, but we can take it up to the Supreme Court, the highest court in the land, and through legal definition, we can ask the court to rule and provide a judgment or a decision. So what's David now saying? That somehow we're getting rid of the legal status of the courts in our country to interpret the laws that are made by the parliament? It's just crazy. And so, Pat, I agree with you. It's always helpful to determine or define what a word means, and then to give it validity as if it's required to be tested. We rely on those learned men and women that we put our faith and trust into to provide a determination over the interpretation of that word, to then give it ultimate meaning, whether that be kāwanatanga, whether that be sovereignty, whether that be whatever it might be. But what I found really disturbing, and it's a narrative that's coming out quite a bit in this government, which is, let's just cast aside the decisions and determinations of the judiciary now, and we'll make the laws without the laws having a monitor. Or in other words, so in that case, who audits the auditor? Who polices the police? It's just crazy. And also with the absence of a second tier of the Parliament, the Legislative Council, we rely on the Select Committee process to then hold inquiries or then seek submissions from the general public on the basis of the law in the first or second or third reading being passed. And then what happens, which is remarkable in this little game, is that they can usurp the Select Committee process already through saying, well, okay, the Select Committee process will only run for this amount of time, or whatever the case might be. So, I agree with you, but I just think we all need a reality check on how our system of government works. And if you believe in what David Seymour says, be prepared for all of your rights to be stripped away by the judiciary no longer having an existential role in our society.
That kind of brings us to the
end. That was rant number 5.
Yeah, well, that's a good roundup. And I was going to say, is there anything you want to wrap up on? That was quite a nice point to wrap on, I think, there, Matt. Is there anything you want to say, Chobe, before we say goodbye to Matt and keep going?
No, thank you so much. My voice has never been more rested.
I'm a ranter.
And I am up in Auckland this weekend, Matt. I'll drop you a text.
Yeah, come on over.
Yeah, man. Might come and say good day. All right. Hey, thanks so much for joining us. Congratulations on being involved with the debate by rebroadcasting and getting it to as many voices as possible. Have to say, was a little bit jealous seeing the live numbers on his on Bomber's channel there for a second. So, green-eyed monster a little bit over here, but it was very, very good overall, and great to see as much of that information get out as possible. So thank you for your part in it, and thanks for coming on tonight.
Ka kite whānau.
All right. Catch you, man.
Cheers, mate.
All right, Joey.
We might have smaller numbers, but ours are the quality is much, much higher.
Nah, it's not true. Sorry, it's not true. Our quality is
wow, chat. Just remember, I hand your back.
We're arguing about the Joker in the Discord server, says Rajan. I've seen that on Rotten Tomatoes. The Joker, whatever it's called, the second Joker. I know that's Beetlejuice, isn't it? The second Joker has got like a 31% rating from the censors. Censors? No, the people who do the official reviews, the reviewers, and about a 36% rating from the public. So yeah, it's such a shame because that first one was legendary. As it basically feels like, I know it's a different style, but maybe it's done a bit of a Wonder Woman 1984, because that first Wonder Woman was superb. 84 was, I wouldn't piss on it if it was on fire.
So this is clearly, in my opinion, going to be one of those things of like, man, it's a shame they didn't do a follow-up to that really good Joker movie. But I saw a meme that I laughed about, people going on about the fact that I can't believe it's a musical. And there's so many articles that just basically say the next Joker is going to be a musical. That's why we've got Lady Gaga in it. Yes, Pat, I see your face. You didn't notice it was a musical either.
I had no idea.
It's a fucking musical, and you know my thoughts on musicals. Yeah,
oh God.
Yeah, it is a straight up musical.
Let's put Spider Hoofs out there, even though we didn't get Bomber. Thank you for the very generous super chat there, Spides. Pre-question for Bomber: if didn't turns up. Why didn't anyone ask Seymour why he kept the PDF party leader in his party, even though he knew he was charged approximately a year before he resigned suddenly? He's not here, so we can't ask him a question. Māori family introduced me to mutton bird, says Brian. I have to say, when we went to Invercargill, was my first time at trying mutton bird. I'm not a fan. I gave it a go. I am
very much an acquired taste. My cousin loves them.
Right.
No, not for me.
In the French, instead of Māori had have settled New Zealand 1,000 years before the English turned up, the Crown would have made a treaty agreement. This is not about race; it's about governance. Yeah, I mean, if they were going to do a treaty, there were some treaties on the border of North America between Canada and the US, and that's with the landowners, the indigenous people, the people who were there, and the Crown. The terminology he uses about race is just because he's trying to push a race agenda. So, like,
that's where he wants the argument to be.
If England had gone to Norway and done the same treaty, it wouldn't have been a treaty between races. It would have been a treaty between the Crown and landowners. Just because the landowners happen to be brown, he's able to push that barrel, and it's nonsense.
And that's my pushback on his line of like, show me a place where dividing over race has ever worked. And I want to go, show me a country that has an agreement between its indigenous people and a colonizing force.
Yeah.
In the same way that New Zealand has. There isn't one. And this is the thing. We're blazing a fucking path here. We can't look at another country for an example of how to do it. Are we going to look at the US? Like, they wholesale murdered their indigenous people. They moved them off their land. In every agreement that they signed with them, they rode over on horses and murdered them again for the fucking cheek of it. Yeah. Are we going to look at our nearest neighbor? I think we all know that that's not a great idea.
And how recent was the stolen generation? That was like yesterday.
Yeah. All Seymour wants you to think about when he brings that up is apartheid South Africa.
Yeah.
He couldn't make that any more clear unless he rolled up the old flag and pointed to it on a map. That's where he wants people's mind to go. That somehow Māori standing up for their rights under Te Tiriti equals apartheid in New Zealand. It is a foolish fiction, and he fucking knows it.
On the flip side to that very well spoken argument, David said Spides did a great review of Joker 2. So just bringing some balance to the conversation that we've just had. Tawhiri, the right are massively duped by the idea of Māori privilege, like ACT, like Māori scholarships, yet Seymour's family company, McKay and Brash, as Reserve Bank governor, both gave Māori specific scholarships. Interesting. And also remember, the Māori scholarship things, people jump up and down, but they never jump up and down about the rural scholarships. They never jump up and down about the rural entry to get into medical school, because there is one. If you're living rurally, you get precedence over someone living urbanly. They never jump up. In fact, many of you would have never heard that before. That's a thing. But you see, it's not something that Seymour and his ilk can point to and go, Brown. So they don't talk about it. And also because he wants that vote. Just finally, Chewie, sorry. A Māori around Aotearoa united to fight racism, asks Brian. I mean, if you've seen those activation days that Te Pāti Māori's been behind, maybe. Two stories to go, Chewie. So what do you got for us now?
Okay, I'll be real quick. I don't think anybody is any single group is united in anything. It's a majority minority thing either way. Yeah. So yeah. All
right, let's move on. We are going to do all those stories tonight. The pre-recorded interview coming up as well, Chewie. If you want to hang around for it, you can. If you don't, you can sod off then. Mr. Luxon was on RNZ this morning report, and it appears that Casey Costello is still running rings around him and he is still carrying water for her. What would you do, Chewie, if I talked to you about a leader, quote unquote, who had a underling, a minister, a manager at a certain level, have some very controversial information that they'd been given that there was a lot of dispute against? Would you like to see that controversial information just to check out that your minister, your head of department, your person under you wasn't putting you in an awkward position? Well, if your name is Christopher Luxon, he doesn't want to see it. He hasn't seen it yet, doesn't want to see it.
Just a couple of minutes before the 8 o'clock news, but I'd like to switch to the advice that you got on these HTPs or heated tobacco products. Casey Costello, your minister, released her independent advice on these devices. Did you find that convincing?
Look, I haven't seen the advice. I know minister.
So in other words, Chewie, I've seen it, and you've seen it, and whānau have seen some of it because we showed you, but the leader of the country hasn't seen it. This independent advice.
What has he seen? Because he hadn't seen the request from the DCC to buy flood-prone properties. He hadn't seen that. It's his go-to. Oh, I haven't seen it. I haven't seen the media reports. I haven't seen the story. I haven't seen the proof. I haven't seen the request. Does this motherfucker walk around with a bag on his head?
Maybe it's not. Maybe he's not bald. Maybe that's like a skin cap he wears over his whole head, and stops him from seeing.
Receive and seek a range of advice from a range of sources, but what we're doing here is making sure we reduce the excess. We're going to reduce the excise and see what would happen if we
talking point.
But you've portrayed yourself as a careful custodian of the public purse, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So you're faced with a decision to spend up to $216 million on cutting the excise tax. You've got Treasury and the Ministry of Health saying they're harmful to health, more harmful than vaping, and there's no evidence that they work. Your minister says she's got independent advice, but it turns out that this is 5 articles that are either about different products or outdated or offer pretty weak support. I mean, 2 of the articles she released are from 2016 and don't even mention heated tobacco products at all. I mean, did that seriously trump the Treasury and Ministry of Health advice?
Well, look, I just say as you go on, look, we've made tremendous progress on lowering daily smoking rates in New Zealand.
Talking point.
The Minister is deeply committed to smoke-free 2025.
Talking point.
My question is about spending $216 million of public money, which is a lot of money potentially, isn't it? And you've done that without even looking at the advice. And have you read the advice, the independent advice that she put out?
What I'd say to you guys is I think you've misrepresented the $216 million the way that you presented it.
Shell game. Talking point. Question, shell game. Look away. Just like we were talking about.
And some of the reporting, what we've done here is we've got a process, or what we want to do is make sure we give people alternatives.
Let's clarify that. If you're claiming this misrepresentation, the Cabinet, and I've seen the Cabinet papers, set aside a contingency fund.
You should be careful, Guy, because you've seen the Cabinet papers, but Luxon may not have. So just be careful what you're going to give to him right now.
Fund for $216 million, right?
Correct. But it doesn't mean that $216 million is going to be spent, because first and foremost, heated tobacco products need to be compliant with our regulations. Secondly, we need smokers to move off cigarettes to go to heated tobacco products. Notice
how they're not talking about Casey Costello's research all of a sudden? That's the shell game. P's gone under the shells, zip, 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 zip. They're now not talking about her information, they're talking about policy.
the tax revenue will be, could be higher because you could have more people sticking with smoking cigarettes rather than moving across to heated tobacco products for a number of different reasons. And all we've done is conservatively estimated the loss or the reduction.
But that's a lot of money.
And he's managed to waste 45 seconds of 2 minutes till the news without having to answer it yet.
Why weren't you interested? Why weren't you interested in the information about whether these things work?
Back on topic.
Because we're interested in actually trying alternatives to get more New Zealanders off smoking.
But there are alternatives that are proven not to work.
Even an alternative that the Treasury and health officials say would only really advantage Philip Morris and may not even work.
Well, I'll just say to you at the moment, as I understand it, these heated tobacco products have to be compliant with our childproof
no, it's not the question.
Regulations that we've just passed on the 1st of
And they
October.
Can't be sold. So how's your trial looking?
Well, whether they're in the market or not, because that's up to manufacturers to produce them and make sure they're compliant with our regulations. We gave them plenty of time to adjust to that. We extended another 6 months. That's on them. But frankly, whether people move off smoking heated tobacco products, whether those compliant products are made available at scale in New Zealand, that will depend upon how much loss of excise tax we actually have. If there is not a shift from cigarettes to heated tobacco products, then that tax revenue will stay higher because, frankly, more people are smoking cigarettes.
There we go. So talking point, bleh, vomit, diarrhea. Peter has said...
Haven't seen it.
Yeah. We could. That's interesting. I wonder what he has seen. It's a good question. Peter says, "Don't know if you know this, but I hear David Seymour as an example of the worst human." There you go. Just put that out there as well. I think we've pretty much done our dash with old Seymour there. I mean, not Seymour. I think. Yeah, you want to say something? Share some more?
Just putting it out there.
Yep.
I don't know. This is a little bit conspiracy theory.
Nope.
But do we know if Luxon can read?
I've never seen it.
Have you seen him with a book?
Yeah,
Maybe he should come in the show and read us a chapter from his favourite book.
Yeah, there you go.
Just putting it out there. Prove them all wrong. Some people are saying Christopher Luxon can't read.
What I would say to you is that I cannot read. What we're going to do now is move into the last part of the show. The last part of the show is a pre-recorded conversation with Marilyn Garson. Marilyn Garson is from the Alternative Jewish Voices. Of course, they are a group who, in fact, she's just about to release a book that's called something like, we talk about it at the end, something like Jewish but not Zionist. So that's where these Alternative Jewish Voices kind of set themselves apart from like the Jewish Council and that, who are Zionists. I wasn't really quite sure how to address today. I didn't want to get on and have someone with IDF talking points just throwing them out there, although that would have been an interesting debate. So I thought Marilyn is legendary and she's been on several times with us before. But again, as I said at the start of the show, what is today? Is it the anniversary of that sound? Is it the commemoration of? Is it 365 days since? But anyway, people who have seen this who are patrons know that Marilyn's amazing. I basically ask a couple of questions and then I set her free to answer them like nothing else. So let's go and have a look at this. It's only 18 minutes. We will be back, or I will be back. Chewie, you can hang if you want, or you can bail now if you want. Leave that up to you. And we can catch up about what Marilyn's got to say at the end of the show in about 18 minutes. And it's a big welcome to the show, Marilyn Garson. Marilyn Garson is from Alternative Jewish Voices and joins us today. I'm not quite sure how we talk about the last 12 months of events between Israel and Gaza, but that's the reason for the contact. So, Marilyn, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for the chance to speak.
Yeah, just while people are wondering and having a look, there's Alternative Jewish Voices, ajv.org.nz if you want to find out more about who they are. All those beautiful people and more, I'm sure. So 12-month marking of Hamas going into Israel and slaughtering, murdering, was it 1,200 or 1,400? It's up that number up in that area, people and kidnapping, a few hundred as well, taking them back to Gaza. I don't know. How do we reflect on that? How do you reflect on the last 12 months, Marilyn?
I find it more useful to reflect on a longer time frame.
Yeah.
Although, of course, the last 12 months is unprecedented. So I tend to look back on it by saying that for so long, wait, let me say it more precisely. On the first night of the 2012 war, I was in Gaza living on the top floor of a 14-story building.
Wow.
And I was sitting and watching the chandelier move and hearing the explosions. And what struck me that I had not appreciated in theory is that Israel bombs unreachably. The Israeli Air Force could fly at will. They could have bombed during the day. They didn't need to do it at night to keep the children awake. There was no reciprocal fear of death to temper violence with any kind of mercy. And it was so enraging. I can't tell you how enraging it is to be unable to do anything. So I look at October 7th as the day that people on the Israeli side of that barrier were no longer out of reach. And these two worlds, the greatest power disparity on earth, they collided. That's what changed.
I was going to ask you at some stage, what's maybe the one piece of incorrect information that's gone out in the last 12 months? And the one I was going to suggest, you've already said that what's happening today didn't begin on October 7th. That to me seems to be the biggest piece of, I don't know whether it's dis or misinformation, but that people look to what's going on now as a response to October 7th, but it's not, is it?
It's not. And I think there is a related misconception that isn't as obvious as what you have just said. And what you've said is formative, didn't start that day. But it's a real power to say history starts this morning and nothing mattered previously. That narrative also has let Israeli spokespeople and Israel's advocates say that Hamas broke the peace. And therefore, Hamas needed to be responded to rather than seeing a series of actions. There was no peace. Gaza has only ever lived in the space between the wars. And peace is much more reciprocal than that. So October 7th was the day of an escalation. And I have to say, I don't celebrate anyone's violence. It's just not in me. Civilians should be safe. I don't celebrate it, but only a fool would have believed that the violence would only ever take place on one side of that barrier. So I think the misconception is that some kind of peace and normalcy had prevailed before that. You know, Israeli opinion surveys for years had been approving of what they called conflict management and agreeing to pay the price of conflict management. But the thing being managed was deprivation. It was not a conflict, it was an occupation. It was a displacement. It was an illegal occupation. And that breeds resistance. So to me, that is the misrepresentation that things had been okay until Hamas broke the peace.
I'm sure you've seen Mehdi Hasan talking to Piers Morgan. I mean, everyone seems to have seen that of recent days. And he seems to be able, I'm actually going to play a clip from that shortly. He seems to be able to nutshell this so succinctly. Like, one of my questions is, how do we acknowledge the war crimes that have been committed by Hamas while still standing up for the civilians in Gaza? And he seems to be someone who is able to say, without supporting the actions of Hamas, of course there's going to be resistance if you're an oppressed person. What else did you expect? What else did you think would happen? So I'm assuming you kind of side with it. That resonates with you?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Let's have a look at this little clip, because the other thing that Mehdi Hasan talked about, it's only about 60 or 90 seconds, is the root cause of the violence. We'll just play this and then I'll get your response to that.
let's sort out what the solution is.
Yeah.
Let's look at the root cause of the violence. It is undeniable that the root cause of the violence is Israel, Israel's occupation, the genocide in Gaza. What did the leader of Hezbollah say? He said, we won't fire any rockets if you end the killing in Gaza. What did the president of Iran say? We won't retaliate for what you did to Ismail Haniyeh on Iranian soil if you end the killing in Gaza. What did the Houthis say? We'll stop blocking ships if you end the killing in Gaza. Where do all roads lead back to?
Why would you believe any of those people?
I don't believe any of them. I'm Ronald Reagan.
You're citing them as if they're sort of gospel statements from people who have unimpeachable integrity.
I'll tell you why, if you let me finish. I'm Ronald Reagan.
A bunch of terrorists said, we won't do X, Y, Z if you do this.
I'm Ronald Reagan. I say verify. Call their bluff. If they're lying, call their bluff. Stop the Gaza fighting and then see what happens.
Yeah, but Israel has called Hamas's bluff.
When?
There was a ceasefire in place before October the 7th.
That's not true.
Well, it is true.
That's not true.
Well, it is true.
It's fundamentally false. They were attacking Palestinians the week before October the 7th.
There was...
In September, you can Google it on that tablet. What's your definition of a ceasefire?
Well,
Israel gets to attack people and not the other way around.
Okay.
In September, hold on. In September, you just made a charge that's not true. There's a tablet there. You can Google it. Guardian headline, right there. You can go see the news report.
I don't Google during interviews.
Well, afterwards, everyone can. There's a Guardian headline, September 2023, a month before October the 7th. The headline is Palestinians shot in the ankles by Israel in Gaza, attacked. There were airstrikes in Gaza. And by the way, Gaza is not isolated. Gaza and the West Bank under international law are one entity. There were several hundred Palestinians killed in the West Bank before October.
But my point to you, Mehdi, is...
So there was no ceasefire. You just can't say... It's just not true.
They would say there was a ceasefire.
And it's not true.
We'd say otherwise.
The facts say otherwise, please.
There you go. So that's Mehdi Hasan and Piers Morgan. I don't know if you have or haven't seen that, but I'd love to get your response to what Mehdi was saying.
I completely agree. It's not the question of the character of Nasrallah, that's not the question here. The question is, when people say, I'm fighting for this reason, why should you believe people of the sterling character of Benjamin Netanyahu and disbelieve everyone who happens to be, what, Arab, Muslim, not Jewish? Why is there a presumption of truth and a presumption of falsehood? I'm completely on his side. And he is not at any point glorifying the fact that now more people are flinging more weapons at more urban centers. That's not good. We want less of that. But if they tell you how to stop the violence and you say, no, let's just do more violence, that doesn't add up to me.
You have been in Gaza, I guess, of recent times, certainly in the last 10, 15 years. Do you think if what Mehdi Hasan just said, stop it, and they'll stop it, Hamas would stop?
That's kind of an interesting question. I think that Hamas, what remains of Hamas is, of course, a different entity after a year of this. And it's never been entirely clear how much of Hamas knew what was about to happen on October 6th. So I don't know any more than anyone else knows about what remains of the chain of command and so on. But with all of those caveats, it seems to me that if Israel's violence stopped with a clear path to something better, then it's hard for me to believe that the people of Gaza would not do everything in their power to ensure that reciprocally the violence stopped while a path of goodwill was being followed. Right?
It's the goodwill, eh? How do we get the goodwill?
It's got to be external.
Yeah.
Because what that interview was not discussing was the credibility of Netanyahu and the people who wag his tail in his cabinet. You want to doubt that Hamas is a goodwill interlocutor? Why should you assume that Israel has goodwill interlocutors in its government?
Yeah.
It's got to come from without. I don't doubt that. The people who are exiting from Israel appears to skew the population toward the extremes. The people who are staying and approving of this action are the more extreme parts of the population. The people who are protesting are not really protesting out of concern for Palestinians. They are protesting out of questions of their national character, of their own government and their own choices, not regarding what their government is doing to others. So I don't see where change happens from within Israel at this point. But I certainly see how to impose change. And that comes from without. That comes through all the kinds of nonviolent economic choices that we can enact all around the world. And it comes from a few critical military and financial backers saying, it's really far enough now. Now you stop.
Within that interview, there is a lot of Mehdi Hassan saying, why would I believe Netanyahu? Israel's lied for 12 months. So that does come up in other parts of it. I don't know. I don't think we can solve these problems, Marilyn. If we could, we would have solved them a long time ago. But Christopher Luxon was in Dunedin recently. And he did a stand up to the media, and the first thing he said was, commemorating the 12-month anniversary of October the 7th, et cetera, and offering his, he didn't say thoughts and prayers, but it's that kind of vibe. And then at the end of it, he went two-state solution. And it feels so strange that there are a bunch of people, I don't know whether they're Zionists or they're just fans of Israel I don't know where that line would be exactly, who are saying Israel has the right to defend itself. We support Israel. We want a two-state solution. But that's not what Israel wants. Israel doesn't want a two-state solution. How do we traverse that conversation when even the people who seem to be, for want of a less clunky line, on Israel's side, are getting to a point, two-state solution, that Israel doesn't want?
Right. So I would say that many of the people you've described, the people that you've described include many Christian Zionists.
Yeah, for
right?
sure.
The majority of Zionists are Christian. So I don't think they're one bit concerned with what Netanyahu wants, because what they want is not being fully stated when they speak.
Mm-hmm.
Beyond that, I'm not sure that anyone has ever simply conceded power of the caliber of Israel's power, and we should not expect that to change. I think it's much harder to envision the path after this year, and very possibly someone just needs to stand in between them for a time, because after this kind of conflagration, the hard feelings aren't going to go away suddenly. Mm-hmm. But again, I think it needs to come from without, because when we talk about Israel and Israel's future, it seems to me that we are talking about two different things under the same name. One is the collective aspirations of a community of people, and the other is a regime of power. And people have rights, right? The people who live between the river and the sea, they all have a right to participate in decisions about how they're governed. We know that. Therefore, the current regime of power, a regime of power does not have rights. This regime of power has delegitimized itself grotesquely with its actions. Perhaps if a few of them were sitting in jail cells in The Hague, that would help to decapitate the snake. And change may have to be imposed on a minority. So do it.
Do you know of a way so when people tend to say, when people side with, for want of a better word, the people of Gaza, the citizens of Gaza, not Hamas, but the citizens of Gaza, it's very, very common to hear within various circles, so you're hanging a terrorist flag. Look at that person wearing a terrorist shawl. Should we care? Should we care that people are overstating and calling others anti-Semitic and that kind of stuff just because they're trying to fight for the people, civilians of Gaza? Is there a way around that to make that messaging better so more people will hear it without getting called anti-Semitic? Or is it just, we just got to do what we've got to do and don't care about what those opponents throw at us?
I think a big part of the answer is leadership, not only our government, but institutions around our country. they need to be standing up and saying, here are the moral anchors, here are the principles. Here are the principles that let us speak. And the principles are international law and civilian protection. And they need to help set, because they have the stage, they have the microphone. They need to help set the terms that let people speak more wisely and be critical consumers of the misinformation that they hear. And it is my view that the Jewish community in particular has been held up as an obstacle by a few people who aggressively speak the way that you've just described. And we need to dismantle that, because that is a way of preventing normal conversation about a war that people care about an occupation that people care about.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I think I could probably talk to you for an hour about this, but it feels like it's an okay place just to leave it off there. But one more thing before we go. You are about to release a book, Jewish, Not Zionist. Tell us a bit about the book, where people can see it, where they can get it, etc., etc.
It's coming out in 2 weeks, and it is my attempt to open this normal conversation by helping people to distinguish Jewish from Zionism, by talking about what happens here, not in New York, not in London, but here in Aotearoa. What happens when Jews stand up? How can people speak about these issues without worrying that they're offending the Jewish community? I've told that story, and I've tackled those big questions in a very local way. And I hope that's a way to open up the much more normal conversation about policy, about activism, without the fear that people really feel around this issue.
Well, when that gets released, we'd love you to come back and ever talk to you about your book. That'd be lovely. But as for today, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you coming on, and we'll talk again super soon.
Thank you very much for the time. See you again.
All right, team, Marilyn Garson there. Yes, Chewie has gone off to spend some time with his partner because it's her birthday tomorrow. Isn't that nice? But we've got a stand-in for Chewie going to join us right now. He's a young broadcaster. We got to give him his crack at some stage, and just encourage him to knuckle down, and it'll happen. Hey, Bomber. Dude, that was epic tonight. How do you feel?
Well, I mean, how sobering was Marilyn's sort of analysis of what's going on in Gaza right now? I just, has it been a year already? Has it been 12 horrific, obscene months? I mean, we've witnessed in real time a war crime, the dimensions of which just seem to make everything pale into insignificance. Over 40,000 dead, 10,000 still under the rubble, 180,000 dead from secondary cause. We're knocking on 250,000 dead, and I just think that her perspective and where she's coming from is so brave as a Jew, standing up against your own people for something that takes a courage beyond the rest of us. So I just want to give as many mad props and love to her as possible. That's the first and foremost. And I'm glad that you're letting her come back on and talk about the book. That's totally. Really good. In terms of the show, hey, look, I don't know. It seems to have gone down well. I think some people were pretty shocked at the format, but I think people felt they heard some stuff they didn't know. They heard the arguments stressed out and fought, and they made their own decisions. And that's the beauty and the joy of living in a liberal progressive democracy.
You obviously went in there with some pretty strong opinions and thoughts and perspectives yourself. What did you get out of it?
Oh, look, I mean, look, hey. Helmut put out the challenge to David. I will debate you anytime, any place, anywhere. David went, okay, the working group. I came to this debate not as some neutral host, for crying out loud. It's a 3-person, a libertarian, and an even more crazy libertarian versus Helmut. That was never going to be that kind of. I was going to always be very antagonistic, and I don't think if the idea that I have some hidden left-wing agenda is a shock to you, hey, come on. If you don't know who I am and what I am about, hey, that's on you.
A little bit jealous, have to be honest. Green-eyed monster. I saw 6,000 live viewers, 6,000 lives at one stage.
Well, that was only our YouTube. That wasn't taken in the RNZ, Māori TV, and New Zealand Herald feeds either.
Yeah, I had a look on New Zealand Herald, and I saw they were playing it through their player, so you wouldn't have got credit for that on your YouTube channel.
Yeah, I know.
I thought, oh, hang on, you should have, just upload us, just embed us. That'll be fine, thanks, sir. We'll just see that. Yeah. Oh no, it was very good, sir. And people in the chat right now are all were stoked. I mean, they all came across.
Hey. I mean, I felt the weight of the whānau on me for this. I mean, I wasn't going to allow the working group or me to be used as a vehicle for some crazy nonsense. I was always going to challenge it. David knew I was always going to challenge it. That wasn't a surprise to Damien either. I mean, I think people who tune in and know what we're about and see the very clear ideological differences, it wouldn't have been a shock for them. But I would imagine for some New Zealanders, it was my God, what's happened if the Russians taken over the media,
Hey, while you're saying that, completely off topic, TVNZ and their One News, potentially their onenews.co.nz going to be canned.
Oh, isn't that insane?
But here's the thing, right? You have just shown tonight, right, the audience that we, groups like us, can get, let's be honest, on the smell of an oily rag. Right. I have been in conversations with, I probably shouldn't say who, but some pretty senior management at TVNZ who said for such a long time, we should figure out how to try. Why aren't they reaching out to us? Why aren't they going, you guys can own your stuff. We could broadcast your stuff to match made in heaven. Why are they being so precious that there's product out there that would cost them 1/20th what their thing is, and we could all still make money? What's it all about?
I think that you've got a mainstream media environment, particularly when it comes to advertising, who are very, very nervous. Shows like yours, I mean, BHN, let's be honest, you call it the way you see it. Now, I love that, and I stand shoulder to shoulder with you on that. But you can easily see, can you not, if, let's say, you were on TVNZ, how quickly somebody from the right, and there are lots of right-wing trolls, right, who would suddenly want to take offense at something you said and start a social media campaign to the problem when you intimidate advertisers and when you intimidate the media with threats of boycotts is that it actually works. And so it's better for them to have something tame and safe than something that might spook the horse.
There's two answers to that. I've had that conversation with the senior management, right? Well, there's three answers. The first one is if we were bigger than Hoskins, they wouldn't give a fuck because they just see it as numbers and advertisers, right? They wouldn't. They wouldn't care.
Right, you're right.
The second thing is, so they get a right-wing podcast on as well that shows after us or before us. But the third thing, which I think is most realistic and most plausible, is they bought The Daily Show, Jon Stewart, and they played it. Left-wing perspective. Whoa, why are you playing that? Well, we don't own that. We're not producing that. We're buying it and showing it to the people who like it. BHN working group. Well, we're just buying it. It's their product. Nothing to do with us. We're just buying it for our customers that do want it. That's the way around it. It's a piece of cake.
And if only our goddamn wisdom was listened to. I just think that in the new media environment that we're in, and it's one, let's be honest, BHN has been the standard. You have set the late night standard. You have generated a live audience larger than most of the mainstream media programs, right? You've actually gone out there into this uncharted territory and made it your own. And I just think that the reality is, if when they shut down News Hub, that was the third largest news site in the country. One News, I think, is the second largest. And when you cut back and cut back and cut back, and you put more and more information behind paywalls, you create two classes of citizens, two classes of information citizens, people who know what's going on and people who've got no bloody idea. And the whole point of the fourth estate was to keep people aware. Hey guys, here's some bad shit going on. You should be concerned about this. If that's all happening in gated communities, well, those gated communities are served, but the wider public isn't. And that's why I think the future for BHN and the working group is it's good, because the situation and the responsibility of fourth estate journalism is still there. It's just that we're the only ones doing it now,
Yeah. Yep. I don't know if you've heard on the Grapevine, Marty, but we're about to expand as well. We're going to do a Friday night show. We're going to get some more hosts on.
Oh, amen.
Yeah.
See, and this is and kudos to you for finding the energy to do that, but also kudos to the audience, the people who are still watching now, the people who they've got a couple of dollars. And let's be clear, times are tough. You have got an audience and a relationship with that audience, Pat, where they will give you that last $2, because what you're doing matters, and what you're doing is a way that they can connect with, and they see a wider world around them for it. That's special, and so awesome that you guys are doing that, but also mad prop to the audience, because they're the ones who effectively keep it going.
Well, we realised that I had COVID for a week, and we shut the show down, and it sounds really ignorant, but I didn't realise how much the audience needed us, as much as we like doing it to the audience. So we're going to get another couple of people on board, and they're going to do a Friday night show, but then they'll also, next time Pat gets COVID, they'll be able to hopefully step in and help out more. So we can actually be there, because the audience who are now watching it, so it feels a bit meta. We actually have to respect them enough to be there when they want us as well. So that's what I realised.
Look, I mean, there was this next month leading up to the election in America is going to be some pretty tough times, and it's going to require everyone hands on deck, and it's going to need calm voices, and it's going to need foresight and oversight and insight all at once. And I think that places like BHN, what we were able to do with Working Group, I think tonight's show managed to open some eyes, and I think people heard things or historical facts they didn't know before, and they were like, oh, that's why Māori are a bit pissed off with that. And that learning process, right? They're going, oh, I didn't see it from that perspective, or that provides a new insight. That's what we're here for, brothers and sisters. If we're not doing that, then we're just getting toxic in our own echo chambers. And there's too much of that.
I've got one critique for you. When you said that this audience would give us the last $2, you should have said like the last $20, because Tawhiri says there's $2. Kiwi Bird says there's $2. Peter says there's $2. If you had said 20, no, I'm kidding. Obviously, I'm kidding. Hey, but look, speaking of our super chats, there's some here for you from Frosty. Love the trim beard bomber. Love the debate. Yous should do more debates like that more often. Maybe your new format. Great debate, Marty says, wow now. One criticism here, Dave says, wasn't long enough, but loved the ending.
Oh, that tight finish. Comrades, thank you. Those are all gratefully received, making the community proud, and making them feel that the values that they live by and the way they see the world can actually be championed in a way that makes them feel like it's worth it, and that's the goal, that you can do right by the community. Yeah.
There's $2 from Ian. There's $2 from Ella.
See, they just, these people, man, it's these people.
I'm a little bit embarrassed, but there's $20 from Modi Order.
Oh, comrade.
Okay, stop, people. People are still doing it. Stop. We love you. We don't need you to. Just stop. It's not a telethon.
Keep those dollars, because you're going to need them. This has got a big month. October is going to be rocky.
Yeah. All right, dude. Hey, thanks for jumping in, popping in for a sec.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you for all of the work you did with the moderating. And you know, if I like to think of myself as the hors d'oeuvre to the BHN degustation, and you know, and long may it work and reciprocate.
Dude, all the best. We'll talk super soon. And look, just on the debate idea thing.
Yeah.
I'll email you. Got some thoughts.
Talk soon.
Bye. See you, brother.
Thanks, folks.
Catch you. All right. Yeah, look, stop, guys. When we make a joke and then someone does that, it's a bit embarrassing, actually, but there's more people here. I'll put them up. Thank you, Marlene. Oh, your first super chat, Marlene. Oh, bless you. Bill, Truth will win out. Thank you for your super chat. Mr. Arvids, the $2 gang. There are so many that have just popped up. I hope I haven't missed any. This was during the pre-recorded interview. KAT, says Mr. Arvids. And one here that I do actually want to correct. Stephen says, she said Hamas broke the peace. Wrong. No. What she was saying, you missed the intonation. She was basically saying now they can be accused of breaking the peace and then Israel attacked. She didn't say they did break the peace. She said the words she used were saying then Israel can accuse them of breaking the peace. Oh gosh, Frosty, stop it. Enough. But thank you. I'm gonna have to turn the show off now to stop you guys. Enough. Stop. All right, guys. Beautiful, lovely to be with you. Longer show tonight, but I'm sure you stuck around and you enjoyed it. And I mean, Bomber's right. You know, I know it sounds a bit cheesy. If it wasn't for you guys, we wouldn't be doing this, as in viewers, but also as in, you know, patrons and that kind of stuff as well. It does feel a bit kind of weird to do a Patreon pitch now, so I'm not going to do it. You guys know the deal. And I will see you tomorrow night from 9 p.m. It's been a great night. Thank you so much for being with us.
Help us settle a debate, whether it be thoughtful or funny, even if we're all creatures of hate. It's a fine line that we're walking together. For better, push aside the temptation to berate. Let's take a note of the corners we stand in. As many points as the hairs on my chinny chin chin. When the news that we're watching is hairy, knowing all the things that we need to be wary of. Like the rich have the hand out for rewards, while the many have to work at what they can't afford. And the rest of us ain't paying attention, or maybe have questions we're too worried to mention. Other media is still dwelling on trivial facts, vetting peas from the rice and the mice from the rats, and picking and choosing a war path to run, and linking ourselves with the hill to die on. It's gotta come down to a welcoming vibe, with an A and a self and a higher in mind. All heavily either this way or that, and we'll be analyzed by what Peewee and Pat. With the evil in the world trying to mess with your head, and you're sitting on the couch, you're thinking chivalry's dead. Each night, 2 nights, they're gonna sing you to bed. It's Big Hairy News.
All right, team. That was a big show tonight. It feels like we've been going since 8 o'clock. It's now 10:41. Thank you so much for sticking it out and being with us through to the end. Unfortunately, you're not going to get any present with the dog walking off screen tonight because she ain't down here with me tonight. Stroppy little thing. But you'll see us back here tomorrow night from 9 p.m. for another edition of Big Hairy News. Be safe, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow night from 9 p.m. for another live one. Hooroo!